Welcome, everyone, to the HeroX Innovation Leadership Speaker Series. I'm Jamie Elliott. I'm joined today by Kevin Kirchner and Charles Elliott from Codefi. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Jamie. Really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
So tell me about Codefi. What is Codefi?
Sure. So Codefi is an innovation incubation organization. We work in the state of Missouri primarily as a 501c3 nonprofit, and our goal is to elevate the economic environment of the places that we love to live. So kind of to give a background and history of the inception of Codefi, it all started when our CEO and founder, Dr. James Stapleton, was doing some research when he stumbled across some data that showed that the majority of new jobs that get created come from young or new startups or businesses or organizations. So yes, there's new roles that come up within a more mature business or organization, but typically the net creation of new jobs comes from new startups. So he said to himself, okay, if this is true, and if we see, the data shows that there's a declining innovation environment where we live, and there are fewer and fewer jobs available to people, and we get what's called brain drain, where people are going to the coasts to do their startups, to get funding, to build cool things. So what can we do about that? And so with his background being in tech and understanding that tech typically provides ideal, comfortable salaries when people are working in tech organizations, they have shared economic benefits. They can ship their products globally, as you know. He said, if we're going to do startups, let's do tech startups so people can get good salaries, have good places to work, good benefits. And so if we're going to do tech startups in a place that's not historically known for tech startups, what do we need to do? We need to help founders start tech companies, and we need to develop a workforce to work in those companies. So he kind of created this supply and demand by starting a nonprofit to help founders launch tech startups and help individuals upskill, learn tech skills, and be able to work inside of those startups. And this all happened about 12 years ago. So fast forward from there, we've helped hundreds of individuals with tech training get tech roles, improve their lives and their families' lives in small rural areas throughout Missouri and the Midwest. We've helped countless companies get started. We've helped them raise capital. The entire ecosystem of the state itself has been revitalized through the work that Codefi does. And it's a really exciting time given where we're at with AI and everything that has transpired over the last few years. We've retooled everything, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but I think that's what we're going to talk about here in a minute,
Yeah,
where we're at
yeah,
today.
that's really cool and very mission driven. I love it. There's a recurring theme when we get to talk to folks who are not on one of the coasts of, hey, there's a rest of the country here too, and there's a whole lot of smart people that want to work hard and do some cool stuff and build some cool stuff. And so it's great to keep that conversation going, and it's interesting that that theme persists. So, Kevin, what's a Vibeathon?
Yeah, Vibeathon. It's like a hackathon, but with AI. So we've realized that as we were training these developers before AI, but now with AI, we can just teach the founders how to build their product. And so now everyone's trying to learn how to do that. And so we presented Vibeathons as a way to introduce vibe coding to the masses and to kind of stir up some engagement on like, we can actually build these tech startups in a weekend if you wanted to. And it's just become an on ramp into some of our other founder startup resources that we can offer other people. And we've had a lot of really great stories come out of it and a lot of minds being open to the possibilities that AI has given us. So it's been a great time.
Okay. So I'm more familiar with hackathons with my background in challenges and things. Is a Vibeathon structurally framed the same in terms of a weekend or a 24-hour period? Is there like a single goal, or do folks come with their own goal in mind? And is there a competition aspect to it? How does it work?
Great question. We've set it up several different ways. We've done 3 Vibeathons now. We've got another one coming up here in mid-May, and they're all a little bit different. So the first one was an in-person over a weekend event. It had 3 sponsored challenges. And because of AI, we thought, you know what? Why don't we just let anybody participate in all three if they want. They can do one or all three challenges and try to build for all of them. And so we had several people make submissions for each of the challenges. And those were sponsored events, sponsored challenges. And then the next event was more like a bring your own challenge. This region in St. Joseph, Missouri was more known for manufacturing. And so we kind of pitched some ideas that they could roll with in the manufacturing space. And a lot of them went down that route. And we had some judges that had some kind of that mindset too on what manufacturing startups would be better used for. And then the last Vibeathon we did here in Springfield, we took a little bit of different approach. If you were just going to bring your own idea, startup idea as a business, could you make a viable business? That was one of the challenges. And then the other challenge, it was a spin-off of what had happened at the previous Vibeathon. St. Joe Vibeathon, we had this guy named Stacy come in. And as everybody was getting settled, I introduced myself to everybody. And my question was, what got you interested in the Vibeathon? And he responded, well, my wife signed me up for it. I don't know what this is. And I don't know anything about AI or whatever, but I'm here to see what this is all about. And so after we gave kind of the kickoff meeting and explained the challenges and what was going to happen, he was going to walk out. He told me afterwards, like I was on my way out the door. And a guy sitting next to him had more of a developer experience, engineering experience, and was like, hey, man, I know you've been in sheet metal stuff for 30 years and like, manufacturing. I don't know manufacturing at all. Should we team up? Can we team up? And they ended up getting, I think, second place at that competition.
Wow.
And so the idea for the next Vibeathon was, what tool can we make to make vibe coding accessible for people like Stacy? Like, what would have prevented Stacy from walking out on that Vibeathon if he had this tool? So something that where you don't have as much of an engineering background and it kind of walks you through maybe more engineering concepts or even does some of that on its own. And there's a lot of different ways. And so we had some really interesting submissions on that third Vibeathon because of what happened in that second Vibeathon. It was really cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So the next Vibeathon is coming up in mid-May, you said?
That's right. May 18th.
May 18th. Very cool. And do you already know the focus of that one, or is there a focus?
Yeah. So this one is going to be similar to the first one. So our first one was 3 healthcare challenges sponsored, and this one will be 3 ag tech
Nice.
sponsored challenges.
So I'll just add a little context to that too. Given where we are in the nation, there are 3 primary verticals that we're focused on at Codefi from an industry perspective, and it's health tech, manufacturing, and ag, because those are the 3 largest sectors in the state of Missouri. And so we've used that to help give ourselves some focus if and when we need a focus, when it's not just a kind of bring your own idea platform. So that kind of helps give us some context to operate the Vibeathon around. And kind of like Kevin was saying in the example with Stacy and the developer, I'll just share another story about the first Vibeathon that we all fell in love with, because it's a great example of how, given the tools that are available to us now, context is king, and there aren't as many barriers to entry, technical barriers that there used to be. So similar to Stacy, at the very first Vibeathon, there was a lady who showed up, and I remember we were kind of doing the kickoff and explaining what the weekend is going to look like. I remember kind of looking over and glancing at her because she stood up and she like had this kind of body posture of like pausing, and then she sat back down. And I thought, okay, whatever. Fast forward, I went and checked on her a few times throughout the weekend, and she was just like heads down, hammering on her keyboard. It came close to time to submission, and she's like, hey, can you please help me do a screen recording? Like, she didn't know how to use like Loom or record her demo. And I was like, wow, okay, sure. Like, I can help you with that. So helped her with her screen recording, her submission. And she ends up winning first place, wins $5,000. Come to find out, she's a mom of 9. She has child disabilities. She's got in-laws living with her. And the problem set that she was working on was a scheduling tool for healthcare organizations. And so she blew everyone out of the water because of her context, because she knew what it was like to juggle multiple calendars, multiple schedules, multiple individuals, multiple healthcare providers, all under one roof. And so the solution that she architected was phenomenal because of her context and closeness to the problem that she was trying to solve. So that's something that we're all very excited about here in Missouri, where AI is really just leveling the playing field for someone who understands a problem at a deep level, can build phenomenal solutions, and have much better success than someone who only knows the technical side. Now, that being said, it's really helpful to have a technical background and technical partners, but it's really cool and it's really exciting to see people come to an event like that. And like she was crying afterwards. She's like, I forgot to connect the dots from beginning to end. When she stood up, she was about to leave. She's like, this isn't for me. Like, I'm not tech savvy. I've played around with AI, I've talked to some LLMs, but this probably isn't for me. She was so glad that she stayed because she's like, this was way easier than I thought. And that's the whole purpose of Vibeathons, really, is to give exposure and build excitement around what people can do now.
Yeah. I mean, that's really empowering, I'm sure, beyond the Vibeathon, beyond the event is, hey, look what I was able to do in this dedicated amount of time. And that competition spirit, and what we see with challenges as well, is lowering that barrier to entry, right? We got to run with the Department of Agriculture. And so we'll be sure to reach out to those solvers about your upcoming one. I think 3 or 4 years in a row, something called ARSX. It was open only to Department of Agriculture scientists, and they would pick some theme for the year, circular economy, for example. And they would say, give us your wildest ideas. It has to be feasible, but give us like the idea that you really want to explore. And they would pick, I think, 10 finalists. They would come in and pitch. They would give a pitch to ag, and the top 3 teams got $100,000 and a year to build these things and try them out and test it out.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's amazing. And it's so empowering. But also, if all you have to submit is a 10-page paper, or if all you have to do to get started is write a prompt, right? It's that first step is a lot easier and it's a lot less intimidating, and you are more likely to sit back down, and keep it going. I do want to play the other side of the coin though, because my background that merged me with innovation was software development. There's a perception of vibe coding in the software development world. How do you all, either in your events or in trainings that you provide to people that are developing, especially now with more and more vibe coding going on, how do you instill best practices of software development? How does that come into play?
Great question. I see AI development as this blue ocean opportunity where we don't play the telephone game like they play in every dev agency, where it's like, I think there's a problem. Let's go tell our CEO. Let's go tell the project manager. Let's go tell the developer. Let's go write the code. And then the end product is nothing like the actual solution that needs to be solved. Now we have the person with a problem can make the solution and it works. And so the caveat, like you mentioned, to that is what are the development guidelines and how do you know it's secure? And we've heard all these horror stories of identification being in a public database somewhere, and just because it was vibe coded over a weekend or something like that, and they didn't know what they were doing. So is a very real concern. With the Vibeathon, we don't have as much of that concern because it's kind of the initial concept, right? It's just like building it out. Let's think about it. Let's try to build something that's moving, working. But we do have a couple resources within the Vibeathon platform to say, like, if you're thinking about front end development, here are some resources. If you're thinking about security, feed this document into the LLM that you're using to vibe code. And it gives you some measure of guardrails. But the other thing I hear a lot about is that AI is going to take all the engineers' jobs. And so the flip to that is, I think we actually need engineers more than ever now to get on board with AI and to be comfortable with AI, to help lead the way and lead the future into what AI can be, for the very purpose of empowering the masses. Like, we don't want to empower them with a flamethrower, that's without any guardrails. We want to empower them with this amazing tool, but teach them how to use it well. And we need engineers with the experience and the knowledge, the expertise to be able to do that also. So I think the more and more we can couple those together, the stronger we're going to get.
I would add to that too, considering the kind of flywheel of services that Codefi offers, one thing that we do through the Vibeathon is it's kind of like an event that's a Kickstarter to potential follow-on training that we offer. So we offer AI skills for business owners or businesses, intro to vibe coding, prompt to product, AI masterclass for developers. And so the Vibeathon can kind of pull people in and make them aware of Codefi and what we're doing. And then they can have these follow-on trainings that are available to them that are grant funded in the state of Missouri to help with that technical acumen of ensuring that they're not, how'd you say it, Kevin, building flamethrowers,
Yeah.
creating leaky buckets, and so we offer that as a solution for people that want to dive deeper into kind of their AI journey and develop those skills. Then for those who build a prototype at a Vibeathon, get really pumped about it and want to find out, does this have legs? Is this just something that won a prize over a weekend, or should I actually pursue this as a startup? Kind of help fulfill our original mission. We built a very robust, thorough validation, incubation, acceleration tool to help those who want to take that idea and understand, like, is this viable? Is it feasible? Is it desirable? What's the TAM, SAM, SOM? What does the competition look like? How can I build out a business model canvas around this? How would investors view this? All the way through validation to preparing you to apply for grants and investors and VCs with your pitch deck, your data room, all your financials in order, all the way through now. We're about to release it. Pretty exciting. We're building agents that can help you with your early stage, incubation. So
Yeah.
they'll help you with your operations, with your finances, with your project management, everything from idea all the way to scaling. So that's another pathway that we help people kind of post event be able to get something launched, get traction, and help reshape their community and hopefully change the trajectory of their family by
That's
building
awesome.
a really cool startup.
Yeah, I imagine, because was just where my brain goes. If I think about a Vibeathon, I've got some crazy product idea and it's going to change the world. And then I show up to the Vibeathon, I'm like, yep, I got that great idea, but I'm going to focus today on my HR system, right? Because you want them to come to the Vibeathon and really explore and experiment and try new things.
Mhm.
If that thing is an HR system because it's needed, like the time management system, right? It's absolutely important. I think it's also, no matter what aspect they decide to focus on, having those support structures for the more common pieces of a startup is really important. It sounds like it's a great structure. Two-part question. Have there been any successes or things you can talk about since the Vibeathons? I know they're fairly new, but things that have happened afterwards. And have you had any repeat competitors? Have you had people come back? What's the community around these events look like?
I can answer the second one first. We definitely have repeat competitors, some serial Vibeathoners, and they've enjoyed the process thoroughly. And each time the platform itself, the Vibeathon platform, gets a little better. I'm not biased in saying that at all, but it has gotten to a point where you can have an in-person event, you can have a virtual event, and you still get a nice experience from the whole thing. You can submit your code and submit your demo videos through the platform. And so we had one guy come to us last time and say, man, guys, I do a lot of hackathons, and this is by far the best experience I've had doing a hackathon like this. It's just the whole experience went super smoothly, and everybody's super nice about it. And yeah, so it's an awesome platform that we have a lot of repeat users on.
I'll speak to the first question. Then you mentioned kind of successes. And so I would say that's to a degree relative based on what you mean by success. But if you're talking about like startups getting launched and funded and whatnot, I would say we're in process. So we just had a Missouri Startup Weekend last weekend, and there's about 15 founders that we're considering for investment. We also have an investment fund. I can talk about that if you'd like. It's a really interesting model. It's a venture philanthropy fund. So it's a pretty unique structure where nonprofit dollars can get co-invested with for-profit LPs or limited partners, such that in the world of grant funding and nonprofits and seed or angel investors, a lot of times, an investment will go out and it'll get deployed. And it does good, and that's a good thing when it comes from the nonprofit space, but it doesn't typically have a mechanism for reinvestment happening. And a lot of times those things happen kind of in their own silo. And then LPs and angels and those who are deploying seed capital kind of happen in their own silo. So this brings those two parties together to amplify what they both could do individually, collectively. So the nonprofit dollars get deployed with for-profit dollars, and any returns or dividends that come back, the nonprofit portion gets reinvested into future startups, and then the LPs get paid out like they normally would. Only when you talk about the quote capital desert that we're in here in the Midwest, a lot of times most LPs, they will want to look to the coast or where there's more consistent deal flow, or there are people here with capital to deploy, but they're not always looking in their own backyard because until recently this mechanism hasn't existed. And so what the nonprofit dollars can do is make the investment more attractive to an LP, because within that same structure, a lot of times the nonprofit dollars will take the first loss if and when there is a loss. So it protects the LPs, which attracts more dollars and more investment, which then therefore gives more runway, more follow-on capital available, and helps de-risk the whole startup. So again, we're kind of in the early stages of deploying our first tranche of investment in some of these startups, but really excited about where this new model will grow in the future. So
Yeah.
it's a whole ecosystem that we're working on.
That sounds really smart, very well thought out, and at the same time, again, mission driven. And so it's great to see that impact. One of my earlier challenges at HeroX was called Watts on the Moon. NASA figured out a way to generate electricity on the lunar surface using ice in the crater on the South Pole. But they didn't have a way to transport and store that electricity 3 kilometers out of the crater. So they put it out as a challenge. It was 2 years. The teams got to actually build prototypes and test them in a vacuum chamber at NASA. And I got to meet one of the teams. So the first place team that won was a university out of California. Second place team was a startup out of Colorado. And I got to talk to the startup team, and they said that money was make or break for them, like getting that prize money. What was interesting was that the name of the company was Orbital Mining Corporation. Their mission as a company had nothing to do with electricity transmission and storage. They were just really good at solving problems. They saw this challenge competition that was somewhat adjacent to some work they did, and they decided to enter and ended up winning. But because it was a competition, I knew how much that money meant because it was non-dilutive seed funding. So they got to use that
That's
in that
awesome.
way. And then one we just wrapped up in January with the NIH is more aligned, I think, to what you just shared, Charles. It was called Community Champions for Disability Health. So C3s all around the country who were doing some kind of positive work for disabled populations in their community could submit an idea. I think it was like a 10-page paper max, and talk about what they were doing for those populations, and if they were given a little bit of funding, how they would expand or amplify that program. So 8 teams made it through to phase 2. They got some funding. They did their work for a year and then got to come back and show the results and the impact that they had. And 3 teams won $75,000 each, and they get to showcase their projects next week at the NIH. One of the teams runs dance classes for people with Parkinson's. One of the teams created a gym for people with severe injuries like spinal injuries. And the third team created a training program for dental professionals to treat patients with Down syndrome. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's so
just
cool.
this incredible work out there in the community. Again, non-dilutive seed money that they get to grow their practice. These were small, I mean, every one of them were small community-based organizations, right? Doing some kind of positives. For Codefi, because the Vibeathon thing is fairly new, as I understand. With the Vibeathon scene and Codefi, what's on your roadmap? What's in the future for you guys?
We've got kind of the 3 core pillars. It's AI training, it's startup incubation and support, and then we offer development services that are grant subsidized to help out with someone who wants to take their prototype to MVP or harden an MVP and make it enterprise ready. So those are kind of our three core pillars currently of our flywheel. And to help grease the gears, so to speak, of that flywheel, we're expanding our training tracks to be designed more for kind of apprenticeship, which will enable us to engage existing corporations and enterprises throughout the state and help with creating employment pathways for individuals that can all be enabled by this new skill set that everyone needs, which is AI skill sets in the workplace. And so we're excited to see how the Vibeathon fits into an organizational innovation structure within specific companies themselves or universities or places like that, because it is kind of that fun, exciting event structure, providing that pre-event training pathways and then with those follow-on pathways that I talked about earlier. And then I would say to the incubation and support of the startups that we're investing in is in our short-term horizon as well.
We'd love to see the Vibeathon platform become something that not only we run, but that we could have other organizations be able to run either internal or externally on their own or with our services as well. So we're in the process of figuring out how to transition our platform into something that anybody could use.
Oh,
And
cool.
that would be opening it up to a lot more Vibeathons around the world.
So, what advice would you have? And I have a hard time asking this question because usually it's like for people doing what you're doing, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people doing what you're doing. Plus, you all have a whole lot of reach in terms of who you support. So, like HeroX has a big startup community. I think like half of our 300,000 users work with or for startups. So, for startups that are trying to make it, that are doing something in software development or in vibe coding, any advice that you would share with them?
One thing is follow along. We have a lot of content that we're trying to come out with is geared towards how do you get a founder with enough software experience to be able to vibe code well. I was just talking with a startup developer here, and he's kind of thinking the same way. His founder has great ideas, but how can he get him to join in on the code building process also? And so concepts like GitHub and using Git repos and things like that are a little bit confusing for founders who aren't super dev heavy, but nice essentials to know once you step into the vibe coding world. So topics like that we want to cover to help enhance any founders' vibe coding abilities. And so if you have any founders who are interested in trying out more things with AI or just experiencing what it could be to take some prompts to a product, check out our classes, follow our LinkedIn, our different social platforms to follow along with the resources that we want to share.
Awesome. Yeah, we will definitely share those things as well as other relevant links. And you said the next event is May 18th. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a week long event. So it's Monday to Friday. You can be in person or you can be virtual. And as long as you have someone in the US with a US address, you can be eligible to participate on a Vibeathon team.
Okay.
And so the link to get to that is app.vibeathon.us to register for the event. You can just go to the normal website, vibeathon.us, and follow the links there.
It's a $20,000 prize pool for that event, right, Kevin?
That's right. We have $19,500 worth of prizes. So each challenge will have a first, second, and third place prize.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I think it's really important work. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to share that with the HeroX community.
Thanks for having us. It's been a blast. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us, Jamie.
Thanks, guys.